All right. It's that time of the week. We have figured out that Thursday is apparently the best kind of recording day that I can get. And so we are here for the third video uh, in this sort of like flashback series. Um, today's are they're shorter ones. They all kind of they're little memories here and there, but yet at the same time uh, very still vivid. And it does include the introduction of who would be, I mean, probably my best buddy freshman year, and then another troublemaking partner in crime. Um, but no spoilers. Anywho, um, should be a quick one. And just thanks again for everybody who's kind of tuning in for these. Um, my hope is probably between this video and the next two, we already wrap up freshman year. Freshman year ends up being kind of a shorter one. To give some kind of like behind the scenes stuff, my freshman year, I didn't have like a real dedicated journal. All I had was like scraps of paper all over the place. So it was like memory here, memory there, tuck it in with my zombie writing. So even when like compiling the book, um, there was just one of those things of like you find a scrap of paper with like a date on it and then go, oh, let me mark a note down. But that's kind of what helped piece together a little bit more freshman year. So without further ado, once again, I will probably end up with some like funky, weird, thumbnail. And then I'll the other thing, at least in this one, I don't have pictures. I don't have pictures of this time, um, which is weird. Uh, I know that I have a box of photos that I know exist. I have memories of these photos. I can like see them in my mind, and yet they are nowhere to be found. So either I had them in a box that I threw out mistakenly one year, or they are somewhere in my storage or my parents' house, and I just haven't found them. Um, but hopefully there's something for this sort of like pictures of me and my friends don't exist time of my life. Anyway, I've rambled on far enough, so let's get to a couple chapters and catch you on the other side. We can dance if we want to. We can leave your friends behind. I mean, seriously, I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to use that song in the comments. One of the first real memories that stand out in that first year is one that concerned an upcoming and pivotal moment for freshmen, or just maybe everybody, in high school, and that was the homecoming dance. I had no date, I had no prospects, but hey, you have to go, right? I met up with a couple of friends there. I was there more just for the experience of going. However, I would not get out of the dance without some sort of a memory, and that was thanks to Kate. Earlier in the year, I had developed my first high school crush, and it was on Kate. I was drawn in by her confidence and creativity, and maybe a bit wowed by her attention. We shared both choir and English. We got along very well and had at times hung out after school. So while she did already have a date to the dance, and romantically, I don't ever think I was on her radar, at one point during the night, during one of the slow songs, she waved me down as she walked up to me. Would you like to dance? She asked. Absolutely, I said, unable to hide both my excitement and surprise. It was the only dance I really did that night, hers and mine. I never saw myself as an energetic dancer, and I still hadn't made too many friends, much less female ones that I felt confident enough to ask to dance. I was an awkward, short zombie and 80s obsessed freshman who liked being a wallflower. So that dance, Kate's asking me, did give me a bolt of self confidence and even caused my heart to leap. So, for both of that and the fact that she was one of the first friends I made in high school, that memory is still so vital and vivid to me. I was also there in completely dorky fashion to make sure no zombies crashed the party, which was the plot of one of the first zombie stories I wrote in high school. I had written several versions of that short story with Kate, Emily, Jeremy, and other friends, and I battling with zombie mutants that crashed our high school dance. So, better be safe than sorry, right? Have I mentioned I was a dork? While homecoming seemed to be a bust in the date to a dance department, my next attempt would yield a result that would need a horde of flesh-eating undead for me to miss. And even then, I knew how to handle them. Standing, stretching every nerve, I had to listen. I had no choice. I was also lucky in this time to both create new friendships and reconnect with another one, and one of these friendships being a turning point in my life going forward. Firstly, on the very first day of school, I walked into my first period science class and sat down in the back of the class. As the day kicked off, the teacher began handing out, the syllabus and what we had to look forward to that year. And I waited for the paperwork, and as the blonde girl in front of me turned around, we both froze. Matt, she said, a look of surprise on her face. Melissa? I replied. How are you? Oh my gosh, are you here now? I am. We just moved here from Yuma last week. How are you? Melissa P. and I had been in fourth grade together in Yuma at an elementary school named after former President Ronald Reagan. And after our fourth grade, we hadn't seen much of each other. While getting ready for class to start, we talked about the fact she had moved to Phoenix a few years before. We touched base, reconnecting over our fourth grade teacher and friends, and just what happened to not only end up at the same high school years later, but sitting a chair away from each other. We would continue sharing a couple of classes through high school, but it was really neat to have a bit of surprise and familiar face to see every day around a new school. I would meet another friend passing by in the hallway named Stephanie G, who was a junior. She was cool, sometimes quiet, but always a welcoming face, and we just hit it off. She would always wave as we passed in the hallway, and it was fun for a little dorky freshman like me to have someone a few grades higher to talk to. We had a study hall period together, and it was here where we did most of our bonding. We'd talk about music, life. I would be happy to listen to her talk about guy problems. And then she'd always spend her time in the auditorium lobby when not in class. So she became a welcome sight when leaving choir, where I noticed a few of the higher choir people would stop and chat with her as well. However, a standout friend who had something to teach me was Charlotte T., who I met in math. Going by Charlie, she and I would trade jokes and quips, making commentary about school, life, and just the overall environment of high school. We bonded over shared interests in shows, and while I was big in horror, she enjoyed shows like Xena that had a bit more of a mystical edge to them. And we found a crossover with the actor Bruce Campbell. We sat by each other, and when not having to stay quiet during lectures, would always find time to talk. We actually had quite a few similar friends, most notably Crystal and Kate, as Charlie seemed to have known them for a few years. So it was interesting to me to see how interconnected a web of friends can become with just a few chance meetings here and there. As we continued to build our friendship, it seemed clear that we just connected and there wasn't a lot of room for disagreements or friction. But in my youth and in my naivete, I was wrong. One day, after school, Charlie told me she had something to tell me. And as we walked out the front door waiting for her ride, she seemed really pushing to tell me. Matt, she said, I need to tell you who I like. Okay, I said, as we waited for her ride. Matt, it's Kate, she said. I stopped. Wait, what? Kate. I have a crush on Kate. My brain got stuck for a second, and I wasn't comprehending what I was hearing. And my response was fucked up. Okay, wait. You like girls? I asked, and she nodded. Charlie, I can't. I I gotta go, and I can't talk with you anymore. And like a fucking idiot, that is how I left things as her ride pulled up. I walked home with my brain swirling and just shaking my head. How could she tell me something like that? What am I supposed to do with this information? When I got home, I walked upstairs, put my backpack on the floor, and I could hear a voice in my head. Matt, how the fuck could you respond that way? Internally, I heard. In what world is that the way you would ever want someone to treat you would want to treat anyone, much less your friend? It was here where a bit of who I was and what I had heard growing up and in the world around me clashed with who it was I wanted to be and become. I had, up to that point, never really been around someone who I was aware of being LGBTQ+. And in the first time of being told, I reacted with close-mindedness, prejudice, and made it about my own ego. And I was both ashamed and angry. Charlie had opened up to me, and I blew it. I had turned my back on a friend for no good reason other than she was being truthful to the core of who she was. And even though there was talk out in the world from people trying to quote Bible scripture to just not being okay with the fact that non straight people could exist, I never thought I'd have bought into it. But in some way, I had, and I didn't want to. So I changed how I was right there and then. Charlie was my friend, and I hoped she could forgive me, but I also knew that with my reaction, I did not deserve it. The next day, I found her in the hallway on my way to lunch and literally dropped to my knees in front of her. Charlie, I am so sorry about yesterday. What I did was fucked up, and I am so, so sorry. I do not deserve it, but if you could forgive me, I said. Matt, get your ass off the floor, she said, then added with a laugh. Let's go get lunch. It was a lesson I needed, I never forgot, and have always been grateful for. Try not to be a close-minded fuckwit. Moving in stereo. One of my household chores was to take the garbage out to one of the dumpsters in the townhome complex, and Sarah's was to do the dishes. One evening after school, as I was walking out to throw some garbage away, my eyes caught a girl sitting on the curb. She had shorter brown hair and sat in a pair of shorts and a striped t-shirt, and when she saw me, she seemed to do the same double take I did. Her name was Jessica M., and she was in my English class, but I'd never seen her in the complex before. She waved at me. I waved back. She got in a car that pulled up. I didn't know you lived here. How haven't I seen you? She asked me the next day as she sprinted up to me and we walked to school together. I don't know, but you live right around the corner from me, I responded. Jessica and I would spend time talking in English together, would catch each other in the hallway, but would almost always just meet up after school and walk home together. If we didn't, we weren't that far behind one another. Almost daily after school, backpacks would get dropped off and off we'd go. We'd walk the complex, hang out, share our days. If there was homework, we'd do it together, finding a table or playground in the complex or laying on the floor of her apartment or of her parents' apartment. It didn't exactly take long for us to really hit it off as friends. Or how the rumors of the official couple of the preserve got started. I wasn't sure you'd like me at first, I said one day. You're not that bad, was her response, done with a slight grin. One of the things, though, about being in high school is after a while, people around the complex started taking notice of two teenagers, especially a guy and a girl, hanging out all of the time. Some of the other kids who lived there noticed too. Are you guys boyfriend girlfriend? We'd be asked. No, was our joint response. When we would say no, however, they didn't seem to believe us. Now, okay, to be fair, we also didn't shy away from the fact we did like a little bit of the attention and would joke about it between ourselves. It was just how we were. Two friends navigating that first year of high school together and what that looks like. The best thing was, we were perfectly in sync to getting through it together. In our apartment, my parents had a signal for me. They even called it the Matt signal. They'd flash the lights in the stairwell up to the second floor, and with my room right there, I'd see it straight on. Garbage needs taken out? Matt signal. Time for dinner? Matt signal. Someone at the door. Anything and everything, my parents used it, and they used it all 4 years of high school. One day, my dad walked upstairs. No Matt signal. Nothing. He came up the stairs and stood outside my door before asking permission to step into my room. I nodded, and he stepped in, a look of bewilderment on his face. Matt, there's a girl in a bikini here to see you, my dad asked, in a half questioning voice. Oh, that's Jessica. I got up from my desk chair and grabbed a towel I had on my bed. We're off to the pool. I'll see you later. Wait, who's Jessica? He asked, following close behind me as I walked down the stairs. Kid, who's Jessica? Jessica was waiting in the front room wearing a bikini top, sunglasses, and denim shorts. Hey, Matt, you ready? She asked, her ever present smirk on her face. Yeah, let's go. Dad, this is Jessica. She's a friend of mine from school. We have English together, and she lives just a building over. We're going to run to the pool and hang out. I'll be back before dinner if that's okay. Oh, yeah, have fun, my dad said as we headed out the door and off to swim. Was it too much asking if Matt was here and could he come out to play? Jessica asked as we walked, and I laughed. When I got back and changed for dinner a few hours later, my dad still wanted an answer before I headed out again with Jess. He leaned into me, smiled, and nudged me with his arm. Okay, kid, so who's Jessica? With a bit of a mind flip, you're into the time slip. Crystal threw a Halloween party for a bunch of us, and it would be the first of many, many, many gatherings of our group going forward throughout all of high school. With friends from choir and mutual friends like Charlotte, the plan was to have a good time, watch spooky movies, and listen to music. As we stood around in the backyard talking, the music kicked off the opening chords to a very, very familiar song to me. It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Oh, hell yeah, I exclaimed. What? Someone asked. This is the Time Warp from Rocky Horror Picture Show, I responded. A few blank looks were returned. Like the ultimate cult classic and midnight movie? There was some vague realization by a few, but by then I had committed to full riffraff. I began singing, dancing to the chorus, no cares in the world. The song is infectious, and as I noticed the smiles, I just kept having fun. I'd known Rocky Horror for years, thanks to both my enjoyment of the singer Meatloaf and also my parents buying me both the soundtrack and the movie. I knew lines, I knew when to throw rice, and was more than happy to belt the lyrics out. What's gotten into Matt? Someone asked. It was at this moment I also knew the end of the song was coming, and there had to be some sort of end to this dance. I couldn't just fall over out of exhaustion, and that's when I saw it. An unoccupied chair. I bust off into a run at the chair and leapt, planning to use it to propel me into the air. That was the plan. And it did. It propelled me straight up, and the chair about 5 feet over. As I landed on the concrete with a thump on my back, I rolled backward and up to my feet, finishing with some can kicks. And as the song ends, as customary, like the dancers in the film, I fell to the ground. I sat up, laughing and smiling, looking at Kate and Crystal, who were wide mouthed. Are you okay? Crystal asked. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Did I scare you? I said, smiling. I surveyed the area. Chair okay? Did it get a laugh? Kate shook her head, and Crystal was looking at my elbow. I was bleeding from cracking it into the concrete. Does that hurt? No, I said, surprised that I had just hit it. Just some blood. I can still move it. Why would you do that? Kate asked. Because it's the time warp and we're having a good time, I replied. Let's get you some ice and a band-aid or something, Crystal said. All right, but as long as the chair's okay, I'm fine. The time warp would become a very superstitious thing for me going forward. I decided that before every choir concert, I would make sure to get it in. And for Crystal and Kate's sake, maybe I'd do it from the comfort of my own home and away from stray furniture. It's just things happen when you're spaced out on sensation. Like you're under sedation, and yeah, I guess you could do a little dance while you're writing that. We'll search for tomorrow on every shore. Returning from our winter break and a choir Christmas party that saw me as Kate's secret Santa and spending time with her and Emily caroling with the higher choirs, I made my way to the choir room and walked in. As I did, I found Mr. Ludwig sitting at the piano, and he was organizing the new music for the next concert. I was usually one of the first people to make it to the choir room, and today was no different, walking in with no one else there. Hey, Matt, I have something I think you'd be good at, Mr. Ludwig said, but I want to know if it would be something you were okay with. He got up from the piano bench, walked to me, and handed me a piece of music. I looked at the title of the piece and laughed. I flipped through it and nodded. It'll be for the spring concert. You don't have to, but if you do, I think it'll be great, he said. Oh, I'll do this absolutely, was my response, and I was still looking at the title of the piece. I have to. He plucked out the opening notes of the song for me, and I knew then I was absolutely dedicated to the song. As the rest of the choir filed in, Mr. Ludwig greeted us and wished us a happy new year, hoping we had a good break. He said he would be getting right into handing out new pieces. It was time that we geared up for the spring concert. He had already placed new music out on the piano for us to pick up and put in our choir folders, and as we did, I noticed no other copies of this song were out. I know that my puzzled look gave it away because Mr. Ludwig smiled. He gave me a wink. Just wait, he whispered as I passed by him to pick up my music. He explained the new pieces. We all had our parts to look through, and we began practice. The class period went on just like any other, with the ladies sounding awesome and us guys holding our own. We went through each song 2 or 3 times, enough to get familiar and to have an idea of our parts, and for me and Brian, a chance to see any optional baritone notes that we may be given. Once all of the other songs were practiced, he moved to the front of the piano, with a pile of music still in his hand. We do have one more song to perform for the spring concert, he said. We will look at it in more detail later, but I do want to make sure I hand this out now for you all to look at. Put it in your folder, take it home. We'll start on it tomorrow. As he handed it out, there was a slight chuckle from members of the choir. Yes, this will be the fourth and final song of the spring set we'll do. And I've already approached who will take the solo, he said. I caught the eyes of Kate, Emily, and Kristen immediately as they looked at me, and the bell rang. And with that, a little bit of the adventure of towards the end of my freshman year half part. We are now into the new year, which is 1999, so that makes me feel old. But the next bit will have a little bit, well, you got to cover another dance. And maybe, just maybe, I found a date. Anyway, have a great Thursday. Thanks again for watching. I've noticed that people are watching these, and I all of a sudden have subscribers. So thank you for that. If you know anybody from our old Mountain Point group who we had shared friends with or choir with, and I just don't have them, just keep circulating the tapes here, and I'm hoping I'll get to see you next week. So until then, watch some Rocky Horror, and well, keep on rolling.